It started like any other political panel: suits, smiles, and the usual dance of polite disagreement. But the second Michael Moore opened his mouth, the air changed. You could feel it. No script, no filter, just raw, unflinching truth aimed squarely at the one man who absolutely could not take it, Donald J. Trump. With the cameras rolling and millions watching, Moore didn't just call out the former president, he dismantled him, not with rage but with precision. Sentence by sentence, he peeled back the layers of the Trump persona until there was nothing left but the uncomfortable silence of an audience realizing they'd been sold a fantasy. And the best part? Trump wasn't in the room, but it felt like he was. Moore spoke with such brutal clarity that you could practically hear the blood pressure spike at Mar-a-Lago. You could almost see the phone flying across the room as Trump's staff scrambled to mute the TV. This wasn't just political commentary, it was a reckoning. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't Trump dominating the headlines. It was someone brave enough to say what most people were thinking, but too afraid to admit out loud. The takedown had begun. But that was just the opening shot. Moore didn't waste time easing into the controversy. His first real blow hit where it hurt, straight at the heart of Trump's favorite talking point: immigration. He looked dead into the camera and asked the question no one on that stage was brave enough to say out loud: since when did we start hating the people we came from? Because here's the truth, and Moore laid it bare. Unless you're indigenous or descended from enslaved Africans, you came from immigrants: Italians, Irish, Polish, Mexican, Chinese. Every generation, every story, built on people who crossed oceans with nothing but hope in their pockets. And now, suddenly, we're supposed to pretend like immigration is a threat? Moore called it what it was: a con, a fear tactic, a political scapegoat disguised as patriotism. And the irony? Trump's own family line is written in immigration ink. His mother was born in Scotland. His grandfather came from Germany. Yet here he is, building walls and stoking flames like the mirror doesn't exist. Moore didn't just attack the policy, he shattered the illusion. He reminded the audience that America's greatness isn't about keeping people out. It's always been about who we let in. And in doing so, he tore down one of Trump's loudest platforms, exposing it as hollow, hypocritical, and dangerously divisive. But Moore wasn't done, because next, he reminded everyone exactly why his words carry weight. You don't have to like Michael Moore to admit one thing: he's usually right. And that's what makes him so dangerous to people like Trump. Back in 2016, when most pundits were still laughing off Trump's campaign as a sideshow, Moore looked straight into the camera and said, he's going to win. People mocked him for it, called him paranoid, called him dramatic. But then election night rolled around, and suddenly nobody was laughing. He's predicted the rise of populism, called out economic crashes, exposed corporate scams years before they hit headlines. Love him or hate him, the man sees patterns before most people even know they're there. And that's what makes his latest takedown hit different. This isn't some clout-chasing soundbite. It's coming from someone who's been on the money more times than his critics would like to admit. Someone who doesn't flinch when the backlash starts, because he's already 10 steps ahead. He doesn't just speak truth to power, he exposes the rot underneath it. And when he turned that lens toward Trump this time, it wasn't just to criticize, it was to dismantle the entire myth. But it wasn't just Trump's politics Moore came after. No, next he went for the jugular, the part Trump guards more fiercely than anything else. If there's one thing Donald Trump clings to harder than a microphone at a rally, it's the illusion that he's a brilliant businessman. But Michael Moore? He tore that illusion to pieces, methodically, ruthlessly, and with just enough sarcasm to make it sting. He didn't need conspiracy theories or wild speculation. All he had to do was lay out the receipts. Trump's business history reads like a financial horror story. One failed venture after another. A fraudulent university that scammed desperate students. A steak company that couldn't survive in a country obsessed with red meat. An airline that nosedived harder than his approval ratings. And casinos, actual casinos, that went bankrupt. You know how hard it is to bankrupt a casino? That's like losing money selling water in the desert. Moore described Trump's so-called empire as less of a legacy and more like a bloated reality show blooper reel. A string of half-baked ideas slapped with a gold logo and sold as brilliance. In truth, Trump didn't build a business, he built a brand. And that brand was built on illusion, lawsuits, and licensing deals, not innovation or success. And yet, people still buy into the myth, still repeat the line that he's a great businessman, as if 6 bankruptcies and a mile-long list of unpaid contractors is the mark of a financial genius. Moore didn't just laugh at the failures. He exposed the strategy. Trump sells an image, not results, not substance, just gold-plated hype dressed up as credibility. And if you thought that was harsh, Moore was just getting warmed up, because Trump's business disasters were only the opening act for what Moore called his real train wreck. If Trump's business record looked like a graveyard of bankrupt logos his political career, Moore described it as a slow-motion car crash that just keeps flipping. He didn't just take office and stir up controversy. He lit a match in a room full of gasoline, then claimed he was trying to drain the swamp. From the moment he descended that golden escalator, the chaos began. But instead of learning from the backlash, Trump fed on it. He thrived on division. Moore laid it out. 2 impeachments, a global pandemic mismanaged into disaster, and one of the darkest days in modern U.S. history. A violent Capitol riot incited by his own words. But Trump? He didn't apologize. He didn't reflect. He doubled down. According to Moore, Trump's political strategy was simple: deny, distract, and destroy. Lost an election? Blame fraud. Got impeached? Call it a witch hunt? Sparked an insurrection? Claim you barely knew what was happening. In Trump's world, responsibility is a foreign concept, and consequences are just plot twists to spin. What Moore did, though, was something far more devastating than a legal jab or a policy critique. He exposed the insecurity underneath the bluster. He showed the cracks, the desperation, the fear. Trump didn't just lose an election. He lost control of the narrative. And for someone obsessed with being seen as a winner, that might be the most unbearable defeat of all. But even with the political chaos laid bare, there's still one question that Moore wasn't afraid to ask. Why are millions still hanging on his every word? Moore didn't just focus on Trump. He turned the lens toward the people still cheering him on, rally after rally, scandal after scandal. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He called it what it is, not a fan base, a following, not politics, a personality cult. Because how else do you explain it? A man who's been impeached twice, buried in lawsuits, caught spinning more stories than a carnival ride, still managing to fill stadiums like it's 2016 all over again. Moore broke it down simply. They're not voting for a leader, they're throwing a brick through the window of the system that forgot them. To millions of Americans, and especially those worn down, overlooked, or left behind, Trump isn't just a candidate, he's a symbol, a raised middle finger to the elites, a walking, talking Molotov cocktail, and they're not cheering him because they think he's perfect. They're cheering because he's loud, because he's angry, and because he says the things they wish someone, anyone, would say for them. But Moore didn't let that slide. He reminded viewers that this blind loyalty isn't just misguided, it's dangerous. Because once you believe a man can do no wrong, there's no limit to what you'll excuse, no amount of evidence matters. No scandal is too big, no lie too obvious. Trump doesn't need to convince the masses. He just needs to hold on to the faithful few who think every indictment is a badge of honor, and every fact check is a deep state attack. Moore's warning was clear. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about belief. And belief, when weaponized by a man who thrives on chaos, can become something far more destructive than any policy. And as Moore made that crystal clear, he pivoted to Trump's real-time collapse, the legal nightmare no soundbite can spin away. By the time Moore got to Trump's legal mess, it was less of a list and more of a saga, the kind that needs a franchise deal and an HBO docuseries. He didn't just mention the lawsuits. He named them, numbered them, and laughed at the absurdity of how one man could face more charges than a courtroom sees in a month and still claim he's the victim. Fraud, civil suits, criminal indictments, obstruction, election interference, financial misconduct. Pick a scandal, and Trump's name is somewhere on the paperwork. Moore joked that at this point Trump's legal team probably has a punch card. Defend 10 scandals, get 1 indictment free. And the wildest part? Trump wears it all like some twisted badge of honor. In any other universe, this much legal heat would end a career. But Trump? He turns every courtroom appearance into a campaign rally. Every indictment is proof of persecution. Every subpoena becomes another chance to claim the system is rigged, not because of the evidence, but because he says so. Moore framed it perfectly. Trump's legal defense isn't based on innocence. It's built on outrage. He doesn't fight facts. He fights feelings. He's not trying to win in court, he's trying to win the crowd. And it works. His base doesn't want nuance. They want a villain, a conspiracy, a dramatic comeback. And Trump delivers all three in one tweet. But let's be real. The list is ridiculous. You've got ongoing criminal trials in multiple states with prosecutors circling him like sharks that smell blood in the water. There's the hush money cases, the fake electors, the classified documents allegedly scattered around his properties like old golf balls, and a racketeering case that reads like a rejected House of Cards script. And then there's the civil suits, ones that already resulted in massive judgments. We're talking hundreds of millions. That's not fake news. That's a judge, a courtroom, and a verdict. At this point, Trump has spent more time with lawyers than most people spend with their own families. His legal bills are astronomical, and yet he somehow turns them into fundraising pitches. Every time he's hit with a new charge, his campaign sends out emails screaming about witch hunts and emergency donations. And guess what? The money pours in. Moore didn't just call this a legal disaster, he called it what it really is. A strategy, a spectacle, a circus designed to distract, deflect, and delay. But here's where it gets serious. Because while Trump plays to the cameras, the courts aren't playing at all. These aren't gossip blogs or news panels. They're judges, grand juries, and federal prosecutors. And when the trial dates hit, there's no rally, no tweet, no gold-plated excuse that can save him from the facts. Moore painted the picture vividly. Trump, once untouchable, now cornered by a justice system he spent decades mocking, dodging, and manipulating. And unlike his reality show days, there's no producer to yell cut when things get too real. His supporters call it persecution, but Moore called it karma, cold, methodical, and long overdue. Still, even as the lawsuits pile up like overdue bills, Trump keeps spinning the narrative. He's not a man on trial, he's a hero under attack, a martyr, a misunderstood savior battling the forces of evil. And maybe the most surreal part of it all? That strategy works. Because while the legal pressure mounts and the walls close in, Trump finds a way to turn every indictment into merchandise, every scandal into a slogan. And the people who once wore red hats, now they're buying gold sneakers, fake trading cards, and T-shirts with mugshots on them. Moore didn't just list the lawsuits, he showed the madness behind them. The fact that a man buried in legal trouble can still raise millions, dominate headlines, and convince millions that he's the one being wronged. That's not just a legal story, it's a cultural one. And Moore's message was crystal clear. No matter how deep the legal hole gets, Trump will keep digging. Not because he thinks he can escape, but because the digging itself is the brand. The lawsuits are real, the charges are serious, but for Trump, the performance must go on. If the lawsuits expose Trump's legal chaos, Moore's next move was even more cutting. He took aim at Trump's post-presidency hustle and what he called the grift of the century. Because after leaving the White House, Trump didn't ride off into the sunset. He set up shop. And instead of restoring his legacy, he started flipping it like a bad infomercial, turning every scandal, every mugshot, every ounce of political outrage into merchandise. Moore didn't hold back. He rattled off the list like a late-night parody ad. Gold sneakers with Trump's name slapped on them. Retail price, absurd. Design aesthetic, Vegas lounge singer meets pawn shop clearance rack. NFT trading cards, depicting Trump as a superhero, a cowboy, even an astronaut, because nothing screams stable genius like digital collectibles you wouldn't give away in a cereal box. Mugshot merch, T-shirts, posters, coffee mugs, all proudly displaying a booking photo as if it were a presidential portrait. Trump Bibles, yes, actual Bibles, rebranded and marketed with patriotic packaging, as if faith itself could be boxed, priced, and shipped with a donation link. Even Trump wine, because nothing says family values like slapping your name on alcohol while claiming to save America. And the kicker? People are buying this stuff, not reluctantly, not ironically, with pride. To Moore, this wasn't just tacky, it was strategic. Trump figured out that the more trouble he gets into, the more loyal his base becomes. And the more loyal they become, the easier it is to sell them garbage disguised as patriotism. He turned scandal into branding, failure into fandom, indictments into inventory. It's not just capitalism, it's cult-italism, a movement powered not by policy or ideas, but by emotional manipulation and limited edition junk. Moore summed it up with one brutal line: if Trump could monetize humiliation, he'd be the richest man on earth. And let's not pretend this is new. Trump's been in the grift game for decades. This is a man who once tried to sell bottled water with his name on it, Trump Ice. He put his name on mattresses, cologne, even a board game that flopped so hard it's now a thrift store punchline. Every failed business became a blueprint for how to sell hype without delivering substance. Slap a gold logo on anything, make it sound exclusive, and let the loyalists eat it up. It's not business, it's performance art with a credit card swipe. Even his own supporters have become customers. At his rallies, Moore pointed out, it's no longer about ideas, it's about merch tents. You can buy Trump 2024 flags, not guilty mugs, and bumper stickers with slogans so unhinged they sound like rejected movie titles. It's not a movement, it's a traveling gift shop. And while the working class scrapes by, Trump cashes in. Every new scandal, a fresh email blast. They're coming for me. Donate $100 now to stop the deep state. Every courtroom loss, a new t-shirt, every mugshot, a marketing campaign. It's all about turning outrage into income, turning chaos into clicks, turning democracy into a dollar sign. Moore wasn't just mocking the merchandise, he was exposing the method, the game, the con. Trump doesn't run campaigns anymore. He runs clearance sales with a side of nationalism. Even when his charities got hit with fraud investigations, even when courts fined him for fake foundations and illegal donations, none of it slowed him down. Because in Trump's world, ethics are optional, but branding is sacred. And the most tragic part? His base keeps buying. Not just the products, the fantasy. The illusion that somehow giving their last $50 to a billionaire will make them part of something bigger. That owning a piece of the myth makes them a part of the mission. Moore's voice cut through that fantasy like a knife. You're not buying into a revolution, you're buying into a rerun. The Trump empire isn't built on towers anymore. It's built on resentment, nostalgia, and cheap merch. And the more desperate he gets to stay relevant, the more ridiculous the products become. There's no line he won't cross, no product too absurd, no pitch too shameless. Because at the end of the day, Trump doesn't care what he's selling, as long as you're still buying. Everything led to this. The scandals, the lawsuits, the gold-plated grift. Moore had laid out the entire Trump mythology like a magician, revealing every trick in the book. But now he went for the jugular. Not the man, not the merchandise, the illusion. Because underneath the noise, the rallies, the all-caps rants, and endless fundraising emails, Moore pointed to the one thing Trump fears more than indictments, more than losing: irrelevance. Moore described it with chilling simplicity. Trump doesn't fear prison, he fears being forgotten. It was never about governing. It was never about serving the country. It was about image, power, not as a responsibility, but as a performance. And Moore stripped it all bare. He reminded viewers that Trump didn't build his reputation through brilliance or leadership. He built it through reality TV editing, staged boardrooms, scripted catchphrases, and a carefully curated narrative of success. One that crumbles the second you check the receipts. He's not a mogul. He just played one on TV. He's not a genius. He just convinced enough people to say it back to him until it felt true. He's not a warrior for the working class. He's a millionaire raised by a millionaire who's been dodging responsibility and chasing applause since the 80s. And now, with the cameras rolling, the audience shrinking, and the empire wobbling on its last leg, Moore called out the one truth that no amount of merch or mugshots can hide. It's all falling apart. The illusion that Trump is invincible? Shattered. The belief that he's some master strategist playing 4D chess? Gone. Even his most loyal supporters are starting to feel it. That uncomfortable doubt creeping in. That whisper that maybe, just maybe, the man they saw as untouchable is exactly what Moore says he is. A fading brand. Because no matter how loud he yells, how many rallies he throws, how many times he calls himself a victim of the deep state, there's one thing he can't outrun: the truth. Moore painted the collapse in vivid detail. Trump still shows up on stage, still does the dance, still says the lines, but now there's a strain behind the smile. The energy isn't electric anymore, it's desperate. The crowds, still there, but a little smaller. The cheers? Still loud, but now mixed with questions, with cracks forming in the once unshakable loyalty. The brand is still trying to sell itself, but the audience has seen the zipper on the costume. And Moore knew exactly what to say to rip it open. He didn't call Trump evil, he didn't call him brilliant, he called him hollow, a symbol of something that once worked, now rotting in plain sight. A man obsessed with appearing strong, terrified of being exposed as weak, and it's working. Because for all of Trump's bravado, for all the tough talk and defiant speeches, nothing rattles him more than becoming the butt of the joke. That's the one role he can't play, the one mask he refuses to wear. And Moore, in one live appearance, made him wear it. He turned Trump into the one thing he's spent his entire life avoiding. A man who failed, not because of a biased media, not because of deep state sabotage, but because when you strip away the lies, the brand, the gold letters, and empty slogans, there's nothing left. He couldn't run a university, couldn't sell steaks, couldn't keep casinos profitable, couldn't tell the truth, couldn't even lose with dignity. His whole identity was a house of mirrors, and Moore walked through each one, smashing them with nothing but facts and a microphone. And when the final one broke, there was no reflection left to defend. Trump isn't afraid of indictments. He's not afraid of scandals. He thrives on those. They feed his narrative. But the one thing he can't spin, can't manipulate, can't bury under slogans is the moment people stop believing. The moment they laugh, because once they're laughing at you, the fear is gone, the mystique is gone. And for a man who's built everything on the illusion of dominance, being laughed at is the death blow. Moore didn't just attack Trump's reputation. He ended the magic trick. He exposed the wires, pulled back the curtain, and showed the audience that the great and powerful Trump was just a man pulling levers behind the scenes. Desperate for applause he no longer knows how to earn. And that's a fall you can't recover from. Not with a speech, not with a hat, not even with a lawsuit. Because when the illusion cracks, it never holds the same power again. When the dust settled and the cameras cooled, Michael Moore hadn't just delivered a scathing monologue, he'd dismantled a mythology. Piece by piece, illusion by illusion, he showed the world that the empire Trump built wasn't made of gold, steel, or legacy. It was built on imagery, and that image is now cracking in real time. Moore didn't scream. He didn't rage. He didn't need to. All he had to do was say what people already suspected deep down, that Trump, for all the bluster and spectacle, is not a force of nature. He's a man frantically holding together a brand that's starting to slip through his fingers. A character who's outlived his own script. The lawsuits won't stop. The grift won't slow. The rallies will go on. Smaller, stranger, more desperate. But the aura, the untouchable status, that's gone. And once it goes, it doesn't come back. Because at some point, even the loudest loyalists have to look at the gold sneakers, the NFTs, the mugshot mugs, and wonder, is this really what we signed up for? What Moore did wasn't just political. It was surgical. He didn't go for the throat. He went for the mask. And he didn't rip it off. He let it slip slowly, painfully in front of a live audience who suddenly saw the truth they'd been trying to ignore. This was never about leading. It was about being followed. It wasn't about fixing America. It was about making sure Trump stayed the center of attention no matter the cost. The man who once promised to fight for the forgotten is now selling them Bible bundles and gold-plated high tops, pretending it's a movement, pretending it's history in the making. But history isn't made in online stores. It isn't made in rage tweets or in the shallow applause of desperate rallies. It's made in action, sacrifice, leadership. And Trump never had the stomach for any of that. Moore didn't have to make the case that Trump was finished. He didn't declare it like a headline. He showed it. Slowly, patiently, like someone pointing at a crumbling building and saying, "You feel that?" That's the foundation giving out. Because the signs are everywhere. The jokes are louder than the cheers. The lawsuits are catching up faster than the lies can outrun them. Even former allies are inching away, not with big speeches, but with silence. That's how you know it's real. Not when enemies attack, but when friends stop defending. Trump still has a base, but it's no longer a movement. It's a market, a catalog of merch and nostalgia. kept alive by fear, not faith. He's not leading a revolution. He's running a clearance sale. And Moore's final blow wasn't an insult or a punchline. It was a mirror. One that reflected back the sad truth that even Trump, deep down, might now suspect. The show is almost over. He can scream, he can sue, he can spin. But the illusion of strength only works when people still believe in it. And more they're starting to see the cracks. In the story, in the brand, in the man. Because here's the truth Moore drove home. Empires don't usually fall with a bang. They rot, quietly, from within, one piece at a time. And when that rot spreads far enough, the whole thing collapses, not because it was attacked, but because there was nothing left holding it up. So yes, the Trump name will still sell T-shirts. He'll still headline fundraisers, still rant on stage, still pretend he's winning. But look closer. The crowds aren't what they used to be. The magic isn't what it once was. And the empire, it's still standing, but it's hollow, cracked, haunted by the echo of a man who once thought the spotlight would never fade. Moore didn't end Trump. Time did. He just held the clock up to the camera and let the silence say the rest. And that silence, that's the sound of something ending. Something too proud to admit it, too loud to hear it, but too broken to stop it, because when an empire starts to crumble, it doesn't ask for permission, it just falls.